Good morning. Welcome to Coffee Talk. I am here with Vera Walker. I am so excited to talk to you today. And I would love to get started on some questions because I have a list and I'm hoping we can get through it. Okay. You are 99 years young.
Yes.
And I would love to know, what does it feel like?
Well, I just never imagined. I feel just like I always have, I
Really?
think. Yes.
Yeah.
I'm fortunate that I'm in fairly good health. My eyesight is not real good anymore, but that's to be expected. And I get along just fine.
So I hear you talk about how you love technology and you like to email. You're a fan of Coffee Talk. You watch most of them,
Right.
which I think is so cool. So what does a day in the life look like for you? What do you do every day?
Well, I get up in the morning and the first thing I do is go to my computer.
Yeah.
Switch it on. I have my coffee on a warming plate, so it's already hot. And I keep snack foods like Danish pastries and so forth in my bedroom. I actually have my own tiny suite of rooms from the rest of the house. So it's my sanctuary.
Yeah.
And as I check my email and then I check Facebook.
You're on Facebook.
I really didn't want to get on Facebook, but my granddaughter put me on there, and because I knew I'd get hooked, and of course I am. But I keep it mostly to family and really close friends.
So currently you are emailing back and forth with Sherry, who we have back here. And she told me that there's at least 10,000 words now between the two of you because she's collecting a lot of your stories for a memoir.
Yeah.
And I love it because, so Sherry was like, oh, I'd love to sit down and talk. And you were like, well, just email me. And I just love so much that you guys correspond over that.
Yeah.
And she was reading me some of it, and you are a great writer. How you write about your story is very, very cool. Yeah. So I can't wait to see what you guys come up with the memoir. So I do have a question about your earliest memory. Do you remember what it was like when you were a very, very small child? Do you remember what life was like?
I think I remember some things. I was telling you earlier about living next door to my uncle's farm. That's my earliest memory.
How old were you?
I was probably about at least 3.5, 4 years old because they would trust me to go from my home to his home, which they actually properties adjoined, and I didn't have to go out on any main. Well, there were no main highways then. And he would count the cars, and I remember him saying, I saw 25 automobiles today.
Wow.
Passed, and he would have sat there maybe a couple of hours.
What was it like growing up on a farm? You said that there was a cow named Molly.
Cow named Molly.
And a horse, and there were kittens and chickens and all that. So can you kind of take me back to what life was like for you growing up?
Well, a lot slower, I think, than it is now. And I had a wonderful mother, and I had a father who was a very good father, really. And since I always wanted to be a boy.
You always wanted to be a boy?
I grew up just kind of following my dad's footsteps. I was always with him whenever possible. And so as I grew up, he began to take me hunting and fishing, and so that was a lot of fun. So one day, my uncle that I mentioned before took us to the barber shop with him and had our hair cut. Well, I think the barber only cut men's hair in those days, so we ended up with boys' haircuts, and I was so thrilled.
Really?
My mother was furious.
Oh, you're like, this is my dream come true.
I know, I loved it.
Aw. So with hunting and fishing, so we had your son, Captain Johnny, on Coffee Talk, and he said that a lot of his life growing up was hunting and fishing and all that. So I'm assuming he got that from you, that was your life and you.
Also my husband.
Okay.
Yeah.
Would you call yourself a tomboy when you were young?
Yes, I've never been real physical. I hate exercise, and I force myself to do things that, like I used to line dance and ride bicycle. And force myself to ride the bicycle to work. Then I had to ride home, and it was always against the wind. So that's where I got my exercise.
Yeah.
But exercise to me is boring and.
You're like, I don't recommend it.
No, I did a little yoga.
Yeah. So I heard a story from Sherry, and I would love it if you told me that. So your family converted a school bus into essentially like an RV, right?
Yes.
And then you guys drove it across the country. And you saw something very, very interesting.
Well, I saw a lot of things. I don't know what she had in mind. I think
that you through binoculars you got to see.
Oh, the monument that was made by, I think his name was Gutson. Oh no, can't think of it now.
So Mount Rushmore.
Yeah, Mount Rushmore.
You got to see them,
and I think it was Washington's face was nearly completed, and they were working on his nose.
So you got to look through binoculars and see that.
Yes.
Wow.
That was our destination, South Dakota, and but my uncle lived in little town named Oak Creek, and there was a sign in the downtown Oak Creek. It said population 63.
63.
They were all. It was an Indian reservation, the Rosebud, a Sioux Indian reservation. And my uncle was postmaster there.
Wow. So what was it like traveling across America in that time? Because this was essentially one of the first, because there were 6 of you on this, in this?
Yes.
Okay.
My sister and I, my parents, and a couple that were friends of my parents.
Okay. And was this just, we're just going to travel and see where we end up? Like, did you guys do a lot of traveling before? So what was kind of the reason for this trip across America?
Well, to visit my uncle who lived in South Dakota.
And was this the first time that you had gone out and seen other states and other landscape?
I think we had probably been to some other states. I had an aunt that lived in Connecticut. And I remember going to where my dad went deer hunting in Massachusetts.
Okay.
Things like that. And then we always had boats. So we lived only 18 miles from Connecticut across Long Island Sound.
Yeah.
So we visited a lot of harbors on weekends.
Yeah. So then being confined in this bus RV, what was it like? How long did it take you to go all the way across?
You know, I really don't remember. I think we were gone for several months.
Wow.
Most of the summer we went as soon as school got out. We set off. But you realize there were no trailer parks. There were no RV parks in those days.
Right.
So it was a problem knowing where to camp at night. But we found that if we went to a farm, we could buy eggs and milk, and they were happy to have us.
Yeah.
I don't think we were ever refused. And the first night out, we were in Pennsylvania, and the farmer was having trouble with deer eating his crops, and was talking to my dad. My dad never went anywhere without a rifle or a shotgun or something. And so he shot a couple deer for him. He got permission from the game warden, so it was okay.
Yeah.
And we had venison all the way to South Dakota.
Wow.
Because we carried a little ice box and kind of a camp stove. I don't remember exactly what it was like.
That is so cool.
Yeah, it was fun.
Yeah.
And lots of times on the farms there would be children to play with. And so that made it fun for us.
Right. So what else did you see on that journey that stood out to you?
I don't remember a lot of it. I remember one thing that we were on the ferry. This was coming back. We went up through North Dakota into parts of Canada, just see what it looked like, I guess. And I remember crossing the Straits of Mackinac in Michigan, and there was a truckload of cherries. And the driver sold us some.
Ooh.
And when I think about it, I don't know if they were his to sell, whether he was just, but they were so good. I remember that.
Yeah. Oh, that's cool.
And I think we did Niagara Falls and several other states. And it never really seemed monotonous because I have been a great reader since first grade. And I always, as long as I had a book, I was happy.
Yeah.
So it really helped pass the time.
Yeah. So was that journey kind of what got you interested in travel? Are you an avid lover of travel?
I think I'm an avid lover of most everything.
Really? So where have you been? Where have you been in the world?
Well, actually, I've never been to Europe.
Really?
No. But most of my traveling was in Central America when I worked for World Vision, which was much later. And so Haiti and Guatemala, El Salvador, a lot of time in Mexico.
So what is World Vision?
And World Vision is a philanthropical association, and it's a very big one, apparently. And the work I was doing was in child sponsorships.
Okay. And so what did you do?
I went as a favor to a friend before I was employed, but then when I got back, I just kind of got a job there, even though I had just opened a shop in Venice.
Did you feel like that was a passion for you? That was something that you felt you kind of...
It just happened, and I went with the flow.
Okay.
Yeah.
So what did you do with World Vision? You said you went to Haiti.
Well, I did a lot of things. I worked mostly in the office in Venice. It's not there any longer. And when I went to projects, and my first trip was to photograph children for sponsorships. In 2 days, I did 600 photos.
Wow.
And this was the days of film. Little yellow, I carved a carton of little yellow boxes of film. And
so this was to raise awareness that there were kids who needed sponsorship?
These were individual pictures of children for sponsors to semi-adopt.
Okay. Wow.
Like Christian Children's Fund, same thing.
How did you meet your husband?
Well, it was kind of a blind date.
Really?
Not exactly. My girlfriend was interested in a friend of his, and we happened to meet one night. My husband was with him, and I didn't have a choice. But it kind of grew on me.
Yeah. Aw. So I heard that you got married and then he went off to war right afterwards.
Not exactly, no.
Okay.
That's not how it happened.
Okay. Can you tell me how it happened?
We were engaged in at Christmas time, 1940.
Okay.
The first draft was instigated about that time. And the story was, sign up for the draft if you would either get picked to go. I think there's a better word for that. But,
yeah.
Or you could volunteer. And so the very first draft, my husband's best friend was drafted. And he said, you know what, I think I'll volunteer. And it's only for a year, and then we can get married. So in February 1941, he went off with his best friend in the very first draft in our town.
Wow.
Very first. And he was, he went to Anniston, Alabama, Fort McClellan, for his basic training. I was able to visit him once in May because one of his friends had a furlough because he'd had surgery. And he was going back, so he and his girlfriend and I drove down. So I stayed there a couple days then. And finally in August we decided we really wanted to get married then.
Okay.
So I went down by train all by myself to Anniston, and we were married there in the courthouse.
Wow. What did it feel like during that time to know you were getting married, but there was this kind of looming feeling that...
Well, I guess we kind of knew that we might be headed for war, but we didn't know that. We were still not in the war.
Right.
We were married in August. And John did get a furlough in November and was home then, November 41. But I didn't know that that was going to be the last time that I would see him.
How did you get through that?
Well, you just did. You didn't have a choice.
Yeah.
And so I just lived. Normally I was still living at home with my parents. I was working in my father's business. And so we just survived.
Yeah.
But during that time, I was a little bit active because I was in a choral society. I sang in the choir at church, and I belonged to a drama club. And
so you were pretty busy.
I lived in a town where I knew everybody, and there were social occasions.
Right.
You just did what you did.
For people who are watching this, a lot of times it's hard to put yourself into that time in history. You know, you can watch documentaries, you can look at pictures, but it's rare that you get to talk to somebody who went through that time. So do you look at life differently after having gone through so many? There were ups and downs politically. There were multiple wars that you've been through. You've watched technology come out and suddenly boom, and you know you love it so much and you're actively a part of it. So how do you view life now after seeing so much of it?
Well, it is what it is.
Yeah. Yeah.
I just don't know. You just survive, and I think somehow it gets a little easier because you've already been through a lot of these things that you see your kids going through. And,
Right.
And you kind of know that things come out pretty good on the other side sometimes.
Yeah.
Yeah, and hindsight is helpful, but
I'm sure.
sometimes a little painful.
Right. What was your favorite decade to live through?
Oh, you know, I think I've enjoyed every decade I've ever lived through.
Really?
I really have found something to like, something to enjoy. New interests.
If there was one that you could pick that had maybe the most exciting things, which one would it be?
You know, I still don't know how to answer.
You're like, everything is good.
Yeah, actually it is. I'm so grateful for my life.
So if you were to look back and say, this is a decade that I'm glad that I lived through it, but I'm glad that it's over. Which one would that be?
Well, I think experience is very valuable. And things really do happen for the best. Although usually at the time you don't think that it's possible.
Right.
But lots of directions that I've taken worked out fairly well. And I've always found that if I just drifted and relaxed for a while, the answer would come.
Yeah. You seem very positive. Your outlook on life seems very, very positive. So when you look at what's happening in the world today, are you concerned at all, or do you feel like eventually everything will work out?
I just don't know. It's pretty scary sometimes if you let yourself get too.
Yeah.
We just have to wait and see, unless we're in a position that we can do something about it, but most of us really don't have much influence.
Right. So looking back on life and seeing things kind of happen in these big sections, we can look at the decades. Does it seem like history repeats itself?
Well, yes, I think it might, but I can't really think of an illustration of that at the moment.
I think hearing you say, if you sit back and kind of wait, then something good will come out of it. I think that outlook is very, very healthy. Well,
that's the way it's worked out for me. Bad situations are a little easier to endure at this age.
Right. Do you feel like it's because you have seen so many bad things then pan out to be okay, that you're like, even if you're in the midst of something bad, that you know that the experience will at least be worth it? Do you feel like...
Yeah, I think we learn from everything. And even though we might feel that we should have done things a little differently, the past is the past. And just feel that the next time you know better what you should have done.
Right. Do you think that can apply to today? Because we have something that's very, very different that I would say a lot of humanity hasn't had, which is technology. We now have this new thing that we're all so connected. So do you feel like using the philosophy of the experience will be worth it, learn something, do better next time, do you feel like that will still be applicable to today, or do you feel like we're just in a whole new world?
I think it's a whole new world, and I wonder how my great-great-grandchildren are now. We have 4 of them in school already, 3 in first grade, and 1 in the 5th grade.
You're a great-great-grandma to a 5th grader.
I have 7 great-great-grandchildren.
Wow.
No, I'm thinking when I count, I think we have 5 in school now.
What do you think about their life? What do you think about them moving forward into the future?
I can't imagine, because they will never know a time when we didn't have computers.
Right.
The best technology I had is that I can remember, the telephone did exist, but I remember when my dad put electric lights in the house.
Yeah. Wow.
And I remember the first radio that I heard. And my memory of that is, and I must have been, that probably would be maybe my earliest memory.
Really?
My dad held something to my ear, and I heard a woman singing. But all we had was a Victrola. I don't know if I really comprehended.
I just got chills when you told me that. That is so cool.
Yeah.
That there was somebody singing on the radio and you heard that.
Well,
wow.
That was probably 95 years ago.
Yeah.
At least.
Yeah. Wow. I know that you embrace technology. We've said that a few times. Do you have any ideas of what the future might bring?
I'm kind of lost, because I am pretty good on the computer, but I've kind of relaxed, and I really haven't learned to use a cell phone very well.
Yeah.
I decided I know enough to do what I want to do. So it's just beyond my comprehension, let's say.
So do you keep up with where technology is going? So for instance, they're basically the self-driving car thing, like that's basically happening. There's now this, it's called Neuralink, which Elon Musk, who did Tesla, is also kind of pioneering, where apparently there's going to be an implant that you can put into your brain, that I'm not exactly sure what the use of it will be, but I think down the road, imagine they're kind of painting the picture that, imagine if you could have like a Google search engine, but in your brain. So imagine if I asked you a question, you thought, well, let me think about that. And then you just thought about it and suddenly the answer came to you. Do you feel like that's really cool, or do you feel like that's really scary?
I think it's scary.
Yeah.
I think it's very scary.
Yeah.
Life's getting too easy on that score.
Yeah. So do you think that there needs to be difficult times for people to go through in order for life to be meaningful?
Well, no, I don't wish difficult times on anybody, but I think it's the only way you learn sometimes.
Mm-hmm. What are the lessons that you have learned? Can we start with a handful? Because I know that we could stay here all day.
When I was a teenager, my father started to call me Alibi Ike, because I always had an alibi for everything.
Oh.
So I think the best lesson I ever learned, and I didn't learn it that early either, was not to lie. Mm. And I told Larry that recently after his sermon, because he had touched on the same subject.
Yeah.
And it's so much easier not to lie.
Yeah.
Because then it doesn't get complicated.
Right. Wow. That seems very simple, but that is very, very powerful. Mm-hmm. So do you feel like you've lived your whole life by that rule?
Not my whole life.
You pick and choose the right lies. Aw. Well, you had one son, Johnny.
True.
Was that, you decided one child and that's it? Or was there ever...
That was, well, there was another one that didn't make it, let's say.
Okay.
And the doctors felt I shouldn't have it because I'd had rheumatic fever and I'd had another mysterious illness where I almost died.
Really?
Yes, as young. But since then, I've been really healthy.
Yeah.
Except for a few aches and pains that most everybody has at this age.
Right. With having been faced with something like almost dying, do you ever consider, is afterlife or anything like that something that you think about?
Not really, but I facetiously say that if I have another life, I want to have a husband that knows how to dance.
I did not expect you to say that. Aww. What kind of dancing?
My husband danced, but actually had to have a few drinks.
What kind of dancing do you like?
Well, love line dancing.
Line dancing.
That was the answer to not having a husband.
Yeah. Have you ever been to Joyland?
I do know about it because a lot of the girls I danced with went there.
Yeah?
And now they go to the...
White Buffalo?
The White Buffalo.
Yep.
Yeah.
Aw, that's so cool.
I wish I could join them, but I really don't have the stamina.
Do you like watching it?
I do it in the kitchen sometimes. Yeah.
Who do you listen to while you line dance? What kind of music?
Kind of like the rock and country.
Rock and country. Do you have any artists that you really like?
Not really. It's strange, but I grew up in the era of Bing Crosby. Even before that, Rudy Valley. My mother liked him. And I love all kinds of music except jazz. I just do not understand jazz. It's somebody else's idea of music, not mine.
What's interesting about jazz is it almost feels like a language. It almost feels like you're listening to people talk and you can't quite understand what they're saying.
It's disconcerting to me.
Yeah.
It really is.
What's funny is Ryan learned how to play piano. He was classically trained, and then he wanted to learn jazz. And apparently it's literally like two different brains have to be switched on. So there is a whole thing about jazz that, I think some people love it and some people just don't like it. I don't think you can kind of like jazz.
It's not something you can just bounce between that and other music, I feel like.
I do have a personal question for you.
Okay.
What do you think about young people today?
Well, I love them. I have so many young people in my life because, as you said, I have an only child, Johnny Walker. He had 2 children, a boy and a girl. The boy had 3 girls. The girl had 3 boys.
Whoa.
And these cousins have been very, very close most of their lives. Thanks to Johnny. I say it's thanks to the swimming pool that we built. When we bought our house in Sarasota, we had a choice of air conditioning or a swimming pool, and we decided to do the pool.
Wow. I think that might have been a good decision.
It was a pretty good decision because actually the house had jalousie windows. Had about 40 of them, and I imagine our electric bill would have been pretty ominous.
Right. So yeah, just cool off in the pool.
Well, that pool still exists. And then later, after living in Venice for 30 years, which is another long story, I built a house I was able to buy a lot right in back of Johnny's house.
Oh, yeah. Did you design the house?
Yes.
You did?
Yes, I did. And I think everybody should build a house when I think I was 78.
Wow.
I thought it was time I moved closer to Johnny, and I was retired. I could live most anywhere.
Wow. That's really cool that you got to design it.
So all my friends were downsizing, and I upsized. Because I had in mind what I want. I want, number one, big kitchen. I love to cook. And I also, since I was older, realized that I might at some point need a caregiver. I designed my bedroom and bath so that it could be a door closed between that and the rest of the house. And actually, that has worked out very well because Kelly lives with me, and she has 4 grandchildren, and our house is pretty well occupied a lot of the time. So I can just go into my little retreat. My computer's there. I have a big bedroom.
Yeah.
Sherry has seen it. And I just love the life I'm living.
I love how positive you are, and I love how easygoing it seems. You know, like when the good things happen, that's great. When the bad things happen, I'll learn. It's a lesson. So what advice, if you could give our viewers and our listeners some advice?
Well, I don't know about advice, but I do have a theory. I think I was born an optimist.
Okay.
And maybe you don't have a choice. Maybe you're born either an optimist or a pessimist. And I think that makes a lot of difference in your life, or how you live your life.
So you think it's one of those things that you're born with, or you think it's one of those things that once you know that there are optimists and this is how they live, and then there are pessimists and this is how they live, that you can choose? Or do you feel like it is just a part of who you are?
I think it's part of who you are.
Yeah.
I really do. I can't tell you how what the basis for that theory is.
Well, I would say that you're kind of living proof that you would be an optimist.
Well, my husband always told a story. He felt he was a pessimist, and he was in a way. And he used to say that if we inherited a horse together, that he and I inherited, that he would get the front end and he would have to feed it. And I would be happy as a clam because I had manure for the garden.
That's
perfect. I think it's a Reader's Digest. Yeah. So, I don't think it was original, but it's a fun story.
Yeah, that is totally, that completely shows the difference between a pessimist and an optimist. That is amazing. So do you feel like that's true? Do you feel like you can basically find any good thing in anything?
Usually I can. Maybe not at the time, but when I think about it.
Right. What inspired you? Was it Sherry who came to you with the idea for the memoir, or have you always wanted to tell your story, to write it down and have it?
Actually, no. I didn't think it was that important.
Really?
And I remember I was I joined a senior club, singles club, when I first moved back to Sarasota. Mm-hmm. And one night they asked us to tell a little bit about ourselves. Mm-hmm. And I thought, I don't have anything to say. Oh. What would I talk about? And then I remembered, well, maybe they'd be interested in my travels for World Vision. Mm-hmm. And actually, they were fascinated. Mm-hmm. And I thought, well, maybe I do. And then a couple of years ago, I think I started to tell you that this cousin he is a journalist, mm-hmm. Just wanted to know things about his grandmother. Mm-hmm. And so I started emailing him my theories about how she must have grown up. I knew, but I wasn't there.
Right, right.
And about the one-room schoolhouse and mm-hmm. things like that.
So you kind of got into it a little bit.
So I was kind of prepared when Sherry came to me and said she'd like to write a book. I was really flattered.
Yeah. So it kind of started because we're already planning, or your family's already planning your 100th birthday mm-hmm. celebration, mm-hmm. which is March 1st mm-hmm. of 2020.
Wow.
And so we kind of talked about having something nice to hand out to people, and then maybe a more comprehensive something for her immediate family. So we're making it up mm-hmm. as we go. Mm-hmm. You know, we don't really know. So
yeah. Well, my family is very excited about it.
Yeah, I'm sure.
I talked to my one of my great-grandchildren mm-hmm. yesterday. She spent the day with me. And they actually, and I haven't asked Sherry that, they want to know if they could write a little something in the book.
Aww. That's cool.
They are really excited.
I would say it's your book, Vera. We can do whatever you want.
How does it feel to be, you're arriving on that you get to call yourself a centenarian, a centenarian soon. How does that feel?
Well, it feels pretty good.
Yeah.
As I say, things are just normal.
Yeah. That's so interesting to me that you're just like, yeah, this is life. Like, I feel the same.
I have a very serious question. Mm-hmm. Do you have any dieting tips?
Any foods
because there's
to
so
eat,
much conversation around what's the right thing to eat and everything for longevity and brain health. And
right. Yeah.
Actually, I think I always have had a very good diet. Mm-hmm. According to diets of the day, because remember the food pyramid has mm-hmm. changed a lot.
Right, right.
But my mother was a very good cook, and she was very conscious of what was required in those days.
Right.
Maybe because I grew up on unpasteurized milk.
You think that's the secret?
Do you have a favorite dish?
My real secret, when people ask me, I tell them black coffee and junk food.
And didn't you tell me that you always eat dessert? Like you have dessert every single day?
My mother served me dessert with every meal.
With every meal?
Except we were not allowed to have sugar on our cereal.
That's what's crazy to me is I've heard so much about how sugar is detrimental for mm-hmm. your mental health and memory and things, but obviously it didn't mm-hmm. do anything to you.
Well, I asked my doctor one time, every time I had blood work, I'd say, well, it seemed like everyone around me was diabetic.
Yeah.
And I said, how's my sugar? He said, your sugar is fine. He said, your body handles sugar very well. And that was his explanation.
You know why? It's because you're so sweet.
Oh,
and I know it all makes sense.
But I do love sweets, and I love to bake, and everyone around me is either trying to lose weight or is health conscious.
Right.
And I seem to get away with it, so I might as well enjoy it.
Right. What is your favorite thing? So what's your favorite food to make, and then what's your favorite dessert to make?
Oh, I am not really... don't know if I have any favorites. I'm always looking for something new.
Oh, yeah?
And they laugh at me because I get a recipe, and then I tweak it.
Yep.
I have to put a little something else in it,
Yep.
another herb. Or
Right. Little secret
I
ingredient.
make it once, but I have to make it again because I have a better idea, I
Right.
think.
Do you keep a cookbook of all the new recipes that you tweaked?
I have been cutting recipes out of magazines, since I've been keeping house, I guess.
Wow.
And then with the computer, I have access to too many.
Oh, yeah. Especially with things
Too
like
many.
Pinterest and, you just Google anything.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes I just say dinner ideas. And then,
But now I have the Echo Show.
mm-hmm.
And I finally had to get one for my kitchen because just talk to Alexa and say, I have some broccoli. What kind of a recipe should I use? And up comes all these great recipes for broccoli.
Yeah.
And I love it because there's all the recipe and it's on this little screen.
Mm-hmm.
And I have one in my kitchen. I also have one in my bedroom to watch movies, listen to audiobooks.
So you just tell Alexa what
all
to do.
kinds of things.
Yeah.
And our kids love Alexa.
Yeah. So you're not freaked out by Alexa or Siri or any of the little
No.
robot things that they...
Love it. I always thought it would be so great to live next door to the library. Now I have it in my own home.
Yeah. Oh, that's so cool.
It's so cool.
Mm-hmm. Let's say that your family's watching this, because I'm sure that they will. Do you have anything to say to them about your legacy? If you could say, this is, you're a part of me, you're a part of my line, you're a part of the family. This is something that I want to carry on. We've talked about you saying, tell the truth, don't lie, and look at life through an optimist lens. So those two things are great. What is something that you really, really hope that they will remember about you?
Well, I like to say, especially financially, to enjoy your life and spend a little and save a little.
Mm-hmm.
Always save a little, but don't deny yourself too much.
Mm-hmm.
Enjoy life because it's a wonderful world.
Mm-hmm. What is something that you splurged a little bit on? What's like a thing that you did that you were like, you know what, I deserve this. I'm gonna either take this trip or buy this thing. What's something that you did for yourself?
Well, more than one thing.
What's your favorite thing?
I really can't think at the time.
Did you ever take
Probably the computer, but
Yeah.
I didn't splurge. Well, I've splurged since then, but my daughter-in-law gave me my first computer. And I said, she offered it to me, and I said, no, I've got a typewriter, and I have a Selectric. I mean, the Selectric was so much better than what I learned to type on.
Right.
And at first I said, and then I thought, well, what am I going to do if the typewriter quits? Maybe I could learn that. Well, I think, and this may be one of those things that happened for the best, I broke my ankle in 3 places.
How did you do that?
I was at a timeshare, and I came down the stairs at night, and I found out later the light was out. And I thought I was on ground level, and I wasn't. I was on the first step, and my ankle went like that.
Oh, my.
I heard it. You
Yeah.
could hear it.
Yeah.
It's I think the only bones I've ever broken, but I broke it in 3 places.
Wow.
So I was in the hospital for about 5 days, and then I was laid up in a cast, and since it was my right ankle, I couldn't drive, I couldn't do it. I was confined to the house. But I had just gotten the computer that Joanne gave me.
And you were like, you know what? I'm going to learn it.
And she had this neat little program. It was a double disc floppy.
Ooh.
Yeah, this was
Double disc.
double disc floppy, 5 1/4-inch discs. But it worked, and there was this neat little program that taught me word processing, which is really my salvation. One of the best things that ever happened, I guess.
Wow. Literally the only an optimist could really say that, that you broke your ankle and it was a good thing.
Yeah, really.
Wow.
12 weeks of confinement, and that's not me.
Right. Do you go out and have regular gatherings with friends? What's your typical outing look like? What do you do?
Well, now you said with friends. Well, at 99, all your friends are dead. Mm-hmm. That's the unfortunate part of being 99. Mm-hmm. But my family include me in everything, if I can possibly manage.
Right.
And Kelly, my granddaughter, lives with me, as I've mentioned before. And she, bless her heart, just takes me everywhere. And not only that, she cleans my house. And that's it. No, she's a sweetheart. And so that's how I get to church. And
so it's the family, being very involved in the family.
Very involved.
What does family mean to you?
Well, that means everything, especially at this point in my life, that they still care about me and include me in everything. And it's really a blessing to be able to get down on the floor and play with your great-great-grandchildren.
Oh, yeah.
I have one that's going to be 11 in January.
Wow.
And yesterday, I had the newest one spend the day with me, he and his mother. And it's so interesting to have grandchildren. It's a lot better than sometimes having children.
Right. I've actually heard a lot of people say that. Yeah.
It is. You see it.
What's the difference? What's better or worse about it?
Well, I have a whole different attitude. I notice things that I just didn't have time to notice when I was raising a child.
Yeah. So you feel like it kind of just slows down a little bit, that you can really just be there and be present to experience them kind of growing up?
Oh, it is. It's a wonderful experience. And you don't have the responsibility, of course.
Right. That is true. Yeah, I've heard a few people say very, very similar things, that being a grandparent is that kind of you've paid your dues with raising, your own children, and now you have the joys of the grandbabies.
So,
yeah. So is there anything else that any other stories or anything like that you feel would be fun to tell to Ryan and Sherry and me and the listeners?
Well, I have lots of stories.
Yeah.
And some of them just pop up out of nowhere and say, yeah, I did that.
Yeah.
Shall I tell the Sikorsky story?
Yes.
After high school, I went to business school, and it was in Jamaica, New York. I think it's a suburb of New York City, and it's probably about 45 miles from my hometown, so I had to commute on the Long Island Railroad. So one day, the train stopped at Flower Field, which was actually the next stop to where I boarded it. But it was a flag stop, so that was kind of interesting because it rarely stopped there, only when the flagman flagged it down. And two gentlemen got on board, and they sat in the seat in front of me. Well, during the train ride, I happened to look over their shoulder, and they had papers under their arms, and they had some big, looked like maps, like scrolled. And he had unrolled the scroll, and they were looking at a map of what looked to me kind of like an airplane, but it didn't have a propeller in the front, but it had this huge propeller on top. And I didn't think too much of it. I was kind of young to be too concerned about what it might have been. But the next morning, in the New York newspaper, front page, there's a picture of this thing that I had seen on the map in front of me. And it was Igor Sikorsky, and it was the first helicopter. And the article said that everyone would have a helicopter in the future. In the future, there would be a helicopter in every yard. And I'm thinking today, what would the aircraft traffic controllers do about that?
Exactly.
It would drive them crazy.
I cannot believe that you saw that.
I did.
So you kind of had the little sneak preview. Yeah.
I did.
Well, Vera, this has been such a good time. Thank you so much for coming in and doing this coffee talk. I hope that we get to do it again soon.
Thank you. That was fun.
All right, everybody. Thanks for watching.
Bye-bye.
And we're out.